So today we're going to discuss a number of topics which will include how to effectively search for your first or second job, coping with rejection, the importance of persistence and resilience, interview performance in the virtual world, salary negotiation, making a positive impression in your job, and career repositioning and preparing for advancement. So let's start by looking at how to effectively search for your first job. And what I would be suggesting is that the first thing you need to do is identify what it is you want to do, because often students come to us and indeed go to recruitment agencies not really knowing what it is they want to do. So I think the important thing is to start there. And also what I would suggest to students and alumni is to apply for multiple roles. Just don't see your dream job and apply for that only. It really is a numbers game. So make sure that you're applying for a number of roles at the time. And the other tip I would give you before we start talking to Susan and Ed is to make sure that you're tailoring your application, so your CV and your cover letter for the role and company to which you're applying. So there are a number of ways in which you can look for jobs, including applying directly to an organisation, searching LinkedIn, job boards, going to recruitment consultants. So I'm going to start by talking to Susan, and Susan, asking you a bit about what are the benefits of using job boards and LinkedIn when searching for work?
Yeah, great. Thank you, Ruth. Well, I guess the first thing I would totally agree, it's a really unique time in your entire career when you get this opportunity to actually cast your net as widely as possible. So I would completely concur. Don't start with the wish list only. Start with a really expanded wish list, like spend some time sitting down, writing a big list. You can start with the ideal ones, but work down and use the job boards, use LinkedIn to do your research. Let them help you get informed. What are the job titles that companies use? How big are the companies? How many people do they employ in Ireland? Do you want to work in a large company? Do you want to work in a small company? Again, as Ruth said, I would suggest you apply to both. You can't possibly know really where you want to work at this stage. It's hard. And try to do it concurrently, because what you don't want to do is have a couple of your applications get responded to initially, and then, you're 2 weeks into a recruitment process and you haven't heard back from 5 or 10 others. So if and where possible, push as many applications out there. In terms of the job boards and LinkedIn, they are, they're just full of information, and see them that way. Spend time researching different job titles. What is an analyst in one company might be called something entirely different in another. Large US tech companies, have a whole glossary of titles that small, medium Irish companies may not use at all. So I think you have that, it is your responsibility to do that research, become an expert, become like a recruitment expert in this time, and really, research, plan, and cast your net as widely as possible. And, before you press apply, don't do that quickly. Be really clear. Again, there'll be some processes that require a cover letter. There'll be some that require a video. You should, as Ruth also mentioned, be tailoring your CV. I mean, it's the oldest maybe trick in the book, but you should never be using one document. Different companies even require different styles, so that can be dictated indeed. So again, I suppose just to reiterate, plan, research, and cast your net as widely as possible. That is my most simple advice, and use the job boards to enable you to do that, and the recruiters and everybody that you won't always have the luxury of such time and be afforded this, to do that. Once you get into a job, in fact, you're quite restricted in how you can go about your search. So in this instance, use that opportunity and really do as much research as is humanly possible.
Thank you, Susan. You've given great advice there, and I really agree with the research. I think it's so important to research the roles that you're applying to and make sure, do they want a 1-page CV, a 2-page CV? You need to know that kind of detail. So Ed, can I go to you? Do you have any advice that you would give? And also, can you just talk about what it's like to work with a recruitment agency and a recruitment consultancy, and when you should or shouldn't?
Okay, yeah, very good. Thanks very much. And Susan, loads of nuggets of wisdom in there, right? A couple of quick things just in general, right? Sometimes I do counsel people to start not with what they want to do, but what they definitely don't want to do. You know, when you're looking at a menu in a restaurant, you tend to remove things first and see what's left. Okay, so for those of you who might be struggling with the wish list, maybe try the opposite. Okay, so that's the first thing. Like I think Susan, you hit on a key point there, which is it's a line that we use here every day, which is job titles mean nothing without context. Okay, and different companies, as you said, will call different jobs by different names. So it's very important to maybe just get under the bonnet of a role and look at context. And guys, the funny thing is that you actually have a job now. Your job is to find your next job. So it should effectively be a 9 to 5:30 occupation for you over the next while, which, give yourself the space and time to do it properly, and randomly applying for roles is not probably going to be to your benefit, right? So you have a job, it's finding a job, okay? So there's a couple of things that just struck me as you were speaking there, Susan. I guess when it comes to your question, Ruth, around the use of, I guess, recruitment agencies and consultancies. So the first thing I would say to you is that there's quite a wide spectrum of different types of recruitment companies out there, okay? And two lenses that you might just look at them through is that you will have some recruitment companies that are probably advisory in nature and other recruitment companies that are transactional in nature, okay? So just understanding the type of recruitment company you're working with will give you just an idea in terms of how to interact with them. Okay, so that's the first point. Recruitment companies approach recruitment in different ways. Okay, the second thing is you probably won't see a huge amount of graduate level recruitment done through recruitment companies. You'll tend to get the larger multinationals running their own structured programs. Okay, but where recruitment companies are brought in is typically with maybe SMEs or medium-sized Irish businesses who don't have the resources to run their own. So if you're looking to access that type of market, recruitment companies could be a good source. The next point I'd make is that if you do know where you want to be or how you want to build your professional future, for example, if it's within supply chain or logistics or accounting or whatever that is, try to seek out a specialist recruiter in that space. Recruitment consultancies are becoming increasingly specialist, inch wide, mile deep, in terms of the sectors they work in, okay? And actually building up a network of specialists, recruiters in your field early can be a huge benefit to you, not just now, but over your career, okay? So there are a couple of things maybe to call out. Hopefully that helps, Ruth.
That's great. Again, some great advice there. So seek out a network of specialist recruiters if you know what it is that you want to do. I think you're dead right that when you're looking for a job, that is your job. So you should be fully focused on that. 9 to 5:30, but of course with a few breaks in there as well. But I think that you should be fully focused on that. So I'm just going to go to you, Susan. So you've worked abroad, and we're in this very strange time where we can't fly anywhere easily. There hasn't been much travel over the last year and a half. And traditionally, Trinity graduates have gone abroad to get experience. Now, there are plenty of jobs here in Ireland at the moment, and most of our graduates last year did secure employment within a few months of graduating. But Susan, I just want to ask you, why do you think people should consider jobs abroad?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think we'll probably come on to it, but when we talk about skill set and something throughout your career, and particularly at this early part, is transferable skills. So I guess when I thought about it, for me, I came out of having done my MBS in Kerry's version. I went straight into a small boutique recruitment agency in Dublin, where I worked for 3 years, and the economy was actually booming in Ireland at the time. A lot of my friends had left to go to Australia, and I was thinking, about here, we should have had some fun and left. But actually I was enjoying my job, like really loving it. And I thought, right, maybe there are opportunities and abroad. And at the time, the US was way past the green card era. And I had heard about something called a H-1B visa, which was being used for mainly programmers coming from India and other environments. And because I knew the recruitment game as such, I put my research and application skills to practice, and I started applying for jobs. And because it was a .com boom over there, a recruitment company had to sponsor me on a H-1B visa, which was quite unusual actually at the time. So I didn't leave because I needed to. I left because I wanted to, and I just saw it as a way to kind of combine travel and work. But actually, it gave me so much more in terms of skills. It really, I had to learn a new market. I had to build a new network. But it was like the best market in the world for me at the time. America was just so open. Being young, female, there was just no bias, no barriers. I just felt it was really free, and I really, it gave me confidence, and it was so challenging. But that challenge sometimes in a market beyond your own can be even more interesting. And so for me, I guess I really feel it made me be brave. I was brave. It was challenging, but it was a skill set then that stuck with me. I didn't have as much fear after that. So it's the skills, it's those transferable skills, later when you try to move maybe from one sector to another. So you move from pharma to media. At the interview they're saying, "Oh, you need pharma experience," and you're like, "Well, I've already changed markets. I moved from Ireland to the US," or, I've shown transferable skills. So I think from that broader skill set, which is part of the toolbox that everybody needs to build, I found that really incredible. Also, obviously, from a personal perspective, it was something new, and that's always good. So, but laterally in my business, I worked in the Polish market, as you mentioned, for 10 years, and that was culturally extraordinarily different. But the skill set that I brought to that market was that I had experience in the Western market, so I was unique. So the unique skill I had was having worked with US multinationals in the States and in Ireland, and they were coming into Poland. So funnily enough, just purely having worked in other markets was my skill. So I suppose it's not always just what you see on the CV in your list of skills. It's something more. So there is no one reason, but I think it's just expanding your skills. So again, what we've talked about, when you're looking for jobs, it's also to think, what will it give you? What skills will that job with that company, add to the list? So that's another part of again, the research. But I think for me, the abroad experience really expanded my toolbox and my set of skills.
Brilliant, Susan. So it sounds like it really benefited you, and I really liked the way you said it helped you prove that you could transition easily from career to career. When you able to say, I moved market, if you wanted to move industry or something like that as well. Ed, I'm just going to ask you a little bit about that as well, because you've worked abroad as well. So what did you see were the benefits?
Look, I guess there's a couple of things come to mind straight away, which is, firstly, if you think your future is working with an international business, you're probably going to have an international career, right? So, and the people that I see accelerate through organisations are the people who actually take on the challenges of moving outside of Ireland, maybe having first crafted a path within the local business here or the local entity here. So that's the first thing. It's an inevitability. And I do think that people who would be, 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 in terms of ambition, it's part of the course. You've got to get out there. The second thing I would say is that whatever about work, part of the next 5 to 10 years it's almost a journey of self-awareness, okay, and getting to understand yourself. And I know that's a bit woolly, right? But taking oneself out of one's comfort zone, going to a place where you learn about yourself, and that self-awareness is incredibly valuable. Okay, so that's the overriding thing I'd say about it. I worked and lived in Tokyo for 2 years, and culturally it was effectively alien. Everything that I took for norm over here was the opposite over there. To give you a small example, you couldn't smoke outside over there, you could only smoke inside. Okay, so everything was topsy-turvy, and I do think it gives you an appreciation and understanding and empathy to the fact that your perception on the world mightn't be everyone else's. Okay, and I do think it opens one's mind to being able to collaborate with people better, I think. okay, and certainly not leap to conclusions immediately just because of your own background or current understanding, you know. So look, there's loads of reasons, and guys, it gets harder as you get older because you get tied down with stuff. So I do it like as soon as, if you can.
Brilliant. So the virtual world has brought up all these conversations as well. And one of them at the moment is flexibility with work. So most of us have been working at home for the last 18 months or so. So I just wanted to ask you, I'm going to stick with Ed for a minute. Just Ed, can you tell us, you know, what do you think people can ask of an employer over the next year or so?
Okay. Look, I think that's a key question, and it's an emergent space, right? So there's no absolute certainties, okay? But I think what would be a good place to start on that one, Ruth, would be to just give a couple of definitions, right? So there's probably three pockets, okay, that I see out there. You know, number one is working in the office, right? And there will be companies and there will be roles that will require that 5 days a week. Okay, so that's the first category of work. Okay, the second category is work from home, right? So let's define work from home as you live in Dublin or the commuter belt, and you work for a company in Dublin. Okay, and you spend a certain proportion of the time every week in the office. Okay, but the key here is proximity of your home to the actual office itself, okay, and the availability that creates. And the third bucket is remote working, okay. So that's where I guess you're not living in close proximity to the office, and there's little or no expectation of you attending. Okay, so there's a little bit of confusion out there in terms of, oh, I can live in Sligo and work in Dublin. So you there will be situations where you'll be able to do that, but they will not be as commonplace. I think the bulk of organisations will look at work from home, which will insinuate a proximity to the office. Okay, and guys, fully remote working, early career, in my mind, big mistake. Because where you're going to learn the most is actually around the water cooler, listening in conversations and participating in an office environment. Okay, so that's another kind of thing to keep in mind. I'd be getting to the office as much as I could to learn from people. Okay, I guess if there was one or two other things that I'd cite on that, I think most organisations will end up in some type of 3 in the office. Two working from home type model. I have heard of a 2-2-1 model, which is 2 in, 2 out, and 1 flexible depending on the needs of the business. Okay, so that should, in a weird way, I'd encourage that to be the kind of general expectation, with some deviations either way. Okay. And the other thing to bear in mind, and some of the bigger tech companies are doing this. So here's an example. A partner of one of my colleagues is a director with a large social media business with a headquarters in Dublin, and has chosen to relocate down the country full time, fully remote working. Okay, so they made that available. But also there was a reconciliation exercise because that individual's basic salary was based on where the person was living. So there was actually a loss in base salary to adjust for local cost of living. Okay, so just be aware that I don't think it's going to be easy to have a Dublin salary and a Roscommon office. Okay, so there will be some things in the system that need to be worked out there over the next while. You know.
Brilliant. There's some great insights, and I would agree with you. I think an early career, really, if you can be in the office somewhat to learn from others, I think that's really important. And so there are some employers out there that might say they're advertising roles remotely, but most of them, I agree, Ed, will probably want a few days in the office anyway. Susan, I just want to go to you now and just talk about best places to work. So some organisations get involved with this type of accolade. I just hope you could talk a little bit about that, and why should students and recent alumni want to work for the best places to work?
Yeah, well, the Irish Times, where I work, just has an association with Great Places to Work. But yeah, I mean, it's an accolade that certain companies enter into with Great Places to Work, and they go through fairly significant process in order to be awarded the Great Places to Work. I mean, again, I would just put it under the same guys that we talked about in terms of research. Like, because of what they do, there's a serious amount of information shared. So companies who are considered great places to work will talk through all their benefits, why they're a great place to work, you know, what it is they offer. And there's categories of the great places to work in terms of large size, medium size, small size. So, you know, again, I would just use all of that type of data to inform your decisions. And what's a great place to work for one person may not be for another. And well, indeed, as Ed's kind of touched on, and Ruth, I mean, things are evolving though. And so a lot of these companies are actually only putting their new policies out. So actually that's kind of pretty critical at the moment. And I think that is going to be hard in your job search to really understand, like, so it's really, Ed's definitions are so helpful, but you'll have to, like, some companies will be using different terminology, like we talked about the job titles. So I think that before you guys searching, indeed, that's something you'll have to navigate, and very importantly around salary, which I think we'll come to separately. But you know, as Ed says, and we've seen the US are kind of a couple of months ahead of us on some of these things, and many of the tech in the US were already adjusting salaries as people left Silicon Valley and worked in different states where tax is different, salary, cost of living is different. So I think all these matters are important, but I think, as we've said, like, your early career decision really, if possible, should be based around, like, you know, is it something you're going to enjoy? Is it a job that's going to fit you? Like, the company can be great, but think more importantly about the role and what your place in that organization will be. It's sometimes easier to get caught up in the noise of, like, some of the leading tech companies and all that they offer, but you do need to drill down and really ask more questions about the role and who you're going to work with and who are these team members, be they remote, be they in office. And, you know, I think I would wholeheartedly agree with Ed around, you know, your early career is all about learning. It's all about the people you learn from, whether they be your colleagues or your boss. And if in a remote situation, you're very distant from your direct line, your line of boss, that can be a problem. I mean, you're missing out on a huge learning experience. So I think, again, we'll come full circle, but great places to work. And actually the Irish Times will be producing a graduate magazine in September, which will also cover all the different graduate programs. And that we have a week from the 23rd till the 26th of September where we cover different companies and all their programs. So it's worth looking into, again, just gathering that data, reaching out to people, you know, reaching out to Trinity alumni, and, you know, and ask people what it's really like inside.
Yeah.
You need that insider info all the time.
Do you mind if I jump in there with
Go ahead, Ed.
two quick things and a pet hate, if that's okay? So the two quick things are one-liners. So the first one would be that you are the sum of the 5 people you'll spend most of your time with, right? And that's a truth in life. So the caliber of the individuals and their own moral compass will be very defining for who you become professionally. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is, what's the other quote? You are but what people say about you when you're not in the room. Okay, so I love that one. And that's why I think some of the best places to work type surveys, it's about not about companies talking about themselves, but employees talking about their organizations. Okay, so I think there's a lot of value in that. So there's my 2 things. And my pet hate, right? Glassdoor. Okay, so Glassdoor, if you do not know about Glassdoor, it is an attempt to kind of bring to life what people think about the companies they work in, right? So some people I've seen turn down jobs in organizations based on reviews left on Glassdoor. Okay, here's my problem with reviews left on Glassdoor. I don't know if you're in, imagine this, if you were in a bar, it can happen, on a Friday night, okay? The person who speaks the loudest is the person who'll give out about their boss. Okay, nobody comes into a bar on a Friday night and says, I had a very pleasant day in work today and I think my boss is a fine chap, right? That kind of thing doesn't motivate, okay? So I'd be very cautious about reading too much into some of the reviews left because those reviews are often come from a place of frustration and annoyance, which is a much bigger motivator than, contentment. Okay, so that's my pet hate. Is that okay? Bit of rant.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ed, for sharing that. Now we have a few questions, and I'm just going to ask one question here now. How can you reach out to recruitment agencies? What's the best way to do that?
Yeah. So look, there's okay. The challenge with the recruitment agencies is that an individual in a recruitment agency could get maybe 1,000 applications a day, 999 of which are not appropriate to the assignment that they're working in. Okay, so there's a lot of noise in the recruitment environment. That's the first thing. Okay, so a degree of forgiveness if people don't get a chance to revert is probably an important factor. The second thing is that if you're dealing with a specialist, you are more likely to get a response because they're interested in building a relationship with you in the long term. They're not just happen to be working a job that might be suitable for you now. Okay, so you'll get a better chance at a response with a specialist, hence my point earlier. I guess the two other things, look, if I was a grad, what I would probably do is I would probably seek a referral to a recruiter. Okay, so there's much more of an impetus for a recruiter to respond to you if you cite Mary Murphy that you worked with previously mentioned I should get in contact. Okay, so that can be a very powerful drive because effectively, unless they're advertising a job that you might be relevant for, what you're asking is for some of their time. Okay, and then failing that, I would obviously send in a CV by email. Okay, I try to send it directly to the recruiter rather than to an info at. Okay, and if you're really looking to engage, I wouldn't even apply for the job. I'd probably send a direct email to the recruiter specifically about the role rather than through the portal by which they'll get hundreds a day. And last thing is, if you're serious about connecting with them, drop them a LinkedIn connect as well, because guilt is a great thing, right? So 2 or 3 points of contact with one individual might slightly guilt them into giving up some of their time. Okay, so yeah, they're my tips on that.
And do you know what, Ed? I have a pet hate. And my pet hate is when people connect with me and they don't send me a message on LinkedIn. They just click connect. So I think it's really important if you want to connect with somebody on LinkedIn to tell them why or who you are. Now, I have a question for you, Susan. Do you have any thoughts on managing your online profile and how that can impact your employment profile?
Look, the truth is you do have to be careful with managing your online social profile. Recruiters, it depends what careful means, but I mean, in the professional situation, LinkedIn is the profile that you need to manage most. I think in your early career, what happens later is sometimes people change the job titles they use on their CV and it doesn't reflect what's on LinkedIn, or there's any discrepancy within the years that they were in college. So things like that, obviously, that goes without saying, like just make sure everything is crystal clear and it reflects where you are, what you are, where you've been. In terms of early career, like definitely again on LinkedIn, like it should reflect your CV. So any internships, part-time jobs that you wish to include them. And again, consistency across CV and LinkedIn profile. When it comes to, an Instagram profile, I think it's largely private. Do you want your employer to see what you're up to? That's entirely personal, I must say. Is it your employer's business? That's a decision you make. I think LinkedIn is the one you need to be, really clear about. And your personal profiles, I think largely people are using private settings. I would probably recommend that. I would recommend that. But if you're not hiding your interests, and I guess touching on that now, Ruth, one of the things in terms of interview preparation, or again, coming to the skill set, and Ed touched on self-awareness, and I would echo that hugely. Being self-aware is very helpful when representing yourself. But also, in doing that, try to bring the overused term, but I will use it, your authentic self, or bringing all of you to the interview. So I suppose that's where the social piece comes into it in terms of social profiles. Like, do you need to hide that you're a parachute jumper? No, but does the employer care? Well, maybe. But I think this again comes around to, like, ultimately, we talked about the working abroad or whatever forms your toolbox. But an important part of your toolbox is also differentiating yourself. So why are you different than your friend or your what is it that makes you different? Being yourself makes you different. Being authentic makes you different. So I suppose that's a different answer, Ruth, than just about your social profile, but I think it's kind of connected, to be honest. So again, like the LinkedIn piece is very straightforward. Just be consistent. And that's a part of any interview advice as well, like going through an interview process. Be consistent, keep telling the same story, make sure everything's lined up. Don't go into the first interview and when you're back at the second interview start telling a whole different story to another hiring person that you didn't tell the first person. But yeah, I think a degree of self-awareness and caution, around your whole self and your whole profile is important.
Brilliant. I think that's great. Be your authentic self and try and differentiate yourself where you can. I read a Forbes article recently which described the job search process as an emotional roller coaster. And some people seem to get a job more easily than others. And many of our students over the last 18 months have struggled to get employment. We have a question here. My CV gets eliminated in the entry level in spite of being tailored. Do you have any advice for this person? What can be done? And if I go to you on that.
Okay. It's very hard to not just give a vanilla answer to that without knowing the context, which we all know is very important. Okay. So the reality is that the system itself in general is set up in a way that if your let's call it near environment in terms of what the organization is looking to hire, the system's kind of structured that you'll probably get a response. Okay, so the first thing I'd do is I'd step back and I'd say, okay, what is this organization looking to hire and how close am I in terms of background, education, grades, and etc. Okay, and that can be, because some things in life are more likely to happen and some things in life are less likely to happen. So if I'm a PhD chemist and I'm applying for marketing jobs, okay, I'm less likely to get a return. Okay, so the first thing I'd look at is the kind of jobs you're applying for. The second thing is that the whole application process is it's very frustrating, guys. Okay, because there's a lot of computer says no, and then that language eliminated at the first stage. Like this is your life we're talking about, and unfortunately, your personal document hits a soulless machine, and you either hear nothing or you get an automated response, and that's the whole system is broken in that regard, from my opinion. But no one's managed to fix it yet. Okay, but I guess knowing that sometimes it's not about your ability to do a job, it's about the perception of your ability to do a job compared with the other applicants. Okay, so the PhD chemist applies to the marketing job and says, I can do that job. Okay, it's not about whether you can do that job, it's how you're perceived to be able to do that job compared with the other people. And the reality is, if 3 marketing graduates apply and the PhD chemist, guess what? They'll probably pick the phone up to 3 marketing guys first. So sometimes it's not about you, it's about your competition. Okay, and look, the other thing is, guys, I'd keep one's CV as lean and as clear as possible, because here's a harsh reality: nobody's going to read it. Okay, so 15 lines on, excellent communicator, great soft skills, blah 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 blah. Guess what? If the HR person has 1,000 CVs to read a day, they ain't going to be poring over yours in laborious detail. So what they're going to be looking for is, well, I guess A, eligibility to work in Ireland, okay, B, that you have an address in some proximity, okay, C, your grad or undergrad and your actual results. Sometimes it'll be leaving cert results. Do not discount how important they actually can be, okay? And then it's some proof of having worked in some way in the past, okay? The last thing I'll say to you is that I know a hiring manager, one of our largest PLCs, who hires a lot of qualified accountants, and he doesn't really care about the training contract. He cares about what do they do during their summers. Do they work in the local shop? Have they developed a work ethic, right? So less fluff and more facts will get you further, okay? So does that make sense?
That's some great advice, Ed. I really appreciate that. And I think the perceived piece or the perception piece is really important. And the only way to manage that is through communication and perhaps being as objective as you possibly can about a job description. So literally either printing out a job description and getting a highlighter saying, what do I match on this job description, or doing that on your laptop or computer. And
one more quick thing actually, Ruth. Sorry, now, key piece, right? People will interview people who are genuinely interested. So to your point there, when you're making an application, I'm considering, or I'm looking at, or if you're applying for that marketing job, the only thing you want to do for your life is marketing, okay? Vagueness means time waster, okay? So and in a weird way, right, your battle is getting to the table. So you need to be, I'm obsessed with ABC Limited and I've always wanted a career in marketing with your business. Please could we spend a bit of, the enthusiasm and laser focus, that's what's going to get you through that wall. So sorry, yeah.
And actually maybe I'll add to that piece. I think just coming from that is, so we talk maybe too specifically about tailoring your CV, but what Ed is adding to that is tailor your actual application. So the CV is one thing, but then you're tailoring this, pushing through that passion. And as I said initially, one other thing would be, before you press the apply button, do you know anybody who works there? Can you get a direct email address for the HR manager, the head of recruitment? Instead of pressing apply, should you try and also send your CV in another way? I mean, if it's fiercely competitive, as Ed says, they need to feel that passion, and that's hard, and that's communication, and that's going that extra mile. So again, it's back to our kind of initial piece on research planning, and really it is hard. The hardest part is getting to the table. That is the hardest part. There is no two ways about it.
Yeah. I agree. Research and planning is key to every stage of this recruitment process. And the other thing is possibly to seek support. So if you are still a student in Trinity, do go to either the Business School Career Service or the Trinity College Career Service, and we'll do our best to help you out. Another question here. So apart from people looking to relocate to Ireland for employment, there seems to be a reluctance at the moment for the workforce here to make a move to their second or third job. So do the panel see this as a mostly COVID-related market uncertainty? And if so, do you expect it to change? So any comments from either Ed or Susan on that?
Sorry, just didn't quite get the question there, Ruth. So is it people who have a bit of experience postgraduate in the working world are reluctant to move jobs now, is it?
Yes, yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
So yeah, I would say that's kind of accurate, right? Okay, so a couple of things, right? Demand has spiked and will continue to spike for the next couple of months at the very least, due to, I guess, a pent-up latent demand in the system, but also companies are building back and getting ambitious for the future, right? The supply side, which is what we say talent, okay, there's a couple of weird things happening, right? So first of all, people who've been working with companies for the last 18 months, they may have built up a little bit of loyalty with those organizations and maybe feel that they owe them a bit of loyalty because the organization looked after them during a difficult time, okay? So people might, at the moment, are going, I'll hang on another 6 months. Okay, second thing is, in a month or two's time, you might be able to actually meet your future boss in person. So people are hesitating, saying, well, I can hold off and I can maybe actually go through a more normalized recruitment process further down the track. Okay. Third thing is, people have flexible working routines, home, office, they have their own routine now. The uncertainty in terms of work from home or remote, okay, people are going, I'm going to let that kind of figure itself out and then I'll go because I'll be more control then. Thirdly, guess what? People are going to go on holidays. They have holidays booked. People don't tend to start looking for a job and immediately go on holidays, okay? So I'd foresee September and October being a time where you're going to have a spike in supply of talent And guess what's going to happen around then? Sod's law, demand will drop, right? So I do think that there's probably a moment in time for people with a little bit of experience now that might necessarily be there at the end of the year.
Brilliant. Susan, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, no, I would agree. But again, I think when you're looking, again, back to kind of, you just have to keep at it regardless of time, regardless of spikes or falls. Just it is, and this is again, I guess, around the persistence and resilience. Just actually maybe keep at it when everyone else is on holidays. And, over this summer, there is, I think we probably touched on it, but, there is an element of luck in a job search too, and timing and life and all those good things and opportunism. So in a funny sort of way, it's probably July, August is not a bad time to be really hard at it. And maybe you'll be the right person for that job at that moment. It's really new territory. And I think when we talk about the human element and working with that group of 5, like Ed said, that's so interesting too. And then there's a risk reward. Like, should you wait a bit longer to meet your boss in person? Does that really matter? Can you get yourself as strong a feel for that person via Zoom? Yes, you probably can. Is it nicer to meet in person? Definitely it is. So look, there is never, you can't really plan this. But I would say, in fact, take opportunity now and start pushing really hard over the summer, because companies, everyone's been in a really difficult period, and now they're coming out of that, and there will be opportunity.
And so, Susan, I'd say you would agree with me when I say that, like recruitment, it's a random system, right? But the one thing we both know, consistent quality inputs result in an output. Fact. Right? So believe in that, trust the process, and keep going. Something's going to happen.
Yeah, brilliant. And I love the idea of doing things differently, like applying for jobs when everyone else is on holidays. Or if everybody else is looking for a job on LinkedIn, do something different and use a job board or seek referrals or go to an agency. And the other thing is, you don't have to get a permanent position. If everybody else is applying for permanent positions, that's where the competition is. Consider fixed term contracts or even temporary roles as well, especially to get your first step on the ladder, would be my thoughts. So how can you make a positive impression in your new job? Susan, do you have any ideas around that?
Yeah, well, you're so lucky to have got there, so that's brilliant. If, I suppose, going into the recruitment, or still while you're in the process, if there's any opportunity afforded to you to meet someone else in the team, to have a call with someone, like sometimes that's offered, grab it. In the old world, it might have been while you were in the office, they might say, oh, we'll just bring somebody else in to say hello. Grab it. Any opportunity to meet, see, get a better feel for the organization in advance of starting, do it. It is daunting. Like, everyone's first week is terrible. I mean, nobody relishes that first week. You don't know where the bathrooms are in the real physical world. You look and feel really awful. It's tough. It's tough. It doesn't get easier as time goes on. I mean, the organization will have a plan for you, so of course you don't have to do all that yourself. But I think keep doing, again, like research. But I mean, in the weeks coming up to starting, make sure you're on top of everything the company's doing. If they're having any activities, if there's anything in the media about them, make sure you're all over it. Again, LinkedIn, like reach out to people on LinkedIn with a note, says Ruth, and I agree. Look, hi, I'm starting next week. I look forward to meeting you. And okay, you can only do so much asking, but you do have to put yourself out there. And again, I think that's another resounding piece, about asking for help or touching base with people, and even with recruitment companies, like if and when they can give you that time, they know the market, they know the companies, like seek that advice and the culture, when you're about to start, try to get a feel for the culture. What's the dress code? What's expected? Just the little things that, will make you feel will make you feel comfortable on day one. Day one is important. So have a plan again for day one. What should I wear? What do people do at lunchtime? Like, do people go for coffee? Maybe they don't. If it's largely open plan, some people all work wearing earphones. Or should I do that? Or is that like rude? So trying to get the kind of subtleties of your new organization is really important. It'll also help you get to grips with things a whole lot faster. So I guess use LinkedIn. If afforded the opportunity to meet people, do it. If there's any offers for coffee, anything informal that might also be, seem tricky, do it. Push the boundaries, learn as much as you can, because, hitting the ground running really helps. And it helps you, and it'll help the organization as well.
Yeah.
So sometimes people don't end up in the right job first time, and you can be in a job that you're simply unhappy in for whatever reason. Ed, I'm just going to go to you now. Is it easy to change industry or job title or size of organization, or how can that be achieved?
Yeah, so the first thing I'd say is I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up, right? So you mightn't figure that out for a while, and that's okay too. Second thing is that yes, it is possible to change career and to change industries, okay? But there are a couple of realities that come with that, okay? The first thing is that, for example, say you work in supply chain as an analyst, but you really want to move into a marketing role, right? As you get a little bit more experienced postgraduate, what you're doing is you're exchanging, you're gaining learning, but also earning as you go. You're increasing your ability to create value for a company, okay? And in this example, it's value in the supply chain analysis side, okay? So guess what? If you're going to look to move into marketing, you won't know how to do that job. You're moving back on the ladder of learning, okay? And guess what? Earning follows learning. So you're going to need to reconcile the fact that you'll be trading salary for learning, and don't expect to get paid the same money to do a job you don't know how to do, okay? So that's the first thing. The second thing is it can be tricky to do it, right? Back to, it's not your perception of how you can do the job, it's the perception of how you can do it compared to other people, right? So if someone's looking for the marketing guy, they're not going to be saying, oh, that supply chain analyst could be great for this job. They're going to be saying that marketing guy could be great for this job, right? So what I'd encourage people to do is look for crossover and synergies, right? So, for example, if you were working in a call center, okay, and you were a team lead in a call center, but you wanted to get into an accounting, okay, here's what you could do. You could go apply for junior accounting roles in manufacturing sites. Yeah, grand, okay. But guess what? What do you know better than anybody out there looking for junior accounting roles? You know how customer service centres work and call centres. So try to maybe, use that as a wedge. Having worked in customer service for a number of years, I have an understanding of the environment, and also of how the business operates. I'd value an opportunity to get an entry-level role with your firm in the accounting team. So that's where you actually can get noticed. Okay? Back to some things are more likely, some things are less likely. And play the game in a smart way.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ed. Now, Michael's going to come on to me any minute, so I have two more questions I'm going to try and quickly fit in. So Susan, just preparing for advancement, any ideas around how we can best prepare ourselves for a promotion or some sort of advancement in the workplace?
Well, looking at those around you, how have they got into their next job? Quite simply. So looking at the career trajectory of your manager, how did that manager get to that position? Were they hired into the company? Did they evolve up through the company? So that may seem obvious, but I mean, that's the first thing to look at. Secondly, if the company values training, is proposing training, that means that's something you need to get on board with and do so rather quickly. Like the economy, everyone's skills, it's definitely all about learning. And even going back to just what Ed's just said, like earning and learning. Well, ideally you can do both at the same time. So keep learning, keep earning. So, I mean, yeah, like advancement is on the table from the minute you walk in the door. So get your eyes onto it, and, look for those career paths. And, there's so much talk about performance reviews, and so many companies have completely have turned it around, and they're dealt with in very different ways. But any performance reviews are an opportunity to look at career advancement in whatever way they come about. So, start asking those questions. Make sure you're delivering value. I mean, you can't look for advancement unless you're bringing value to the table. So it's a two-way street. But yeah, like the minute you're in the door, you should start looking around and look at what the company values and recognizes and start to mirror that.
Brilliant. I think that's more great advice there. And so I think it's really important. You just simply have to prove yourself. So I think that value point is an excellent point. So Ed, I'm sure you're asked all the time about salaries. How can people get the best salary that they can or negotiate best in terms of salary?
So, okay, so two things, right? Number one is base salary people are obsessed with. I'd encourage people to become more obsessed with the phrase total compensation, okay? So that's all of the extrinsic or monetary value of the package you're being offered, okay? That's the first thing, right? And I've seen people offered a base salary of 30 and someone offered a base salary of 35, but because of the packages, the 30k base salary actually gets paid more on an annualized basis because of bonus and pension and healthcare and all those bits, right? So total comp is what I look at, okay? Second thing is, if you're a graduate, like, here's the reality, you're not really going to be negotiating with a company on salary because they'll likely have their current structure, what they offer the other person, right? So I really would deprioritize. It's not all about the base, okay? It is about getting in with people that you can learn from, okay? So early career grad, expect a grad salary, okay? The only place you can kind of negotiate maybe is if you are intending on taking on professional exams. You might get curious around, would they be able to support you on that? Maybe fund some of the exams, give you time off, right? When it comes to people with a little bit more experience, okay, there's a couple of things. So first of all, this is going to be, your current salary will be quite defining. People don't typically get more than 10-15% premium on their current salary, okay? So manage your expectations in that regard. And I just think openness and honesty and knowing your market value as a result of having spoken with an expert externally, those things combined will point you in the right direction.
Thanks a million, Ed. And I totally agree with you about total compensation. So it might be a new term to people here, but I think it's well worth considering. So Michael, over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Ruth. And thank you again to both Ed and Susan as well. Huge thank you to our panelists indeed for joining us today.